I wanted to come on today and talk a little bit about the novel unit that we just finished. I've said this before, but recently we have eliminated an all-in-one language arts curriculum, and it's been so wonderful. It's freeing and it feels great to do exactly what we want to do, exactly what we're interested in. There are definitely times when I kind of like think to myself, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing enough? And that's just something that I have to pray about. But I also just find certain things to kind of support what I feel are my weaknesses. So I want to share a little bit about how all this works. And then I do want to say that this isn't a new concept, what we're doing. I've definitely been inspired by things that we've done in the past, which includes DART guides. This is very similar, and also learning language arts through literature. We use some of the things that we learned from using that curriculum. What we do has actually kind of morphed over time. When I first started this, I had this very strict system that I wanted to follow. On Monday we do this, on Tuesday we do that, on Wednesday we do this. And I've just learned that that's just not really feasible for our life, especially in this like weird summer schooling. I now more have a list of things that I want to accomplish, and we get to them as we get to them. So it's really great to be able to be so flexible with something that works for our family. So the first step is picking a book. For this one, I picked one that related to what we were studying in history. We're studying the Renaissance period, and I found out that this, from the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler, is about them going to the museum, and they are learning a lot about a Renaissance artist. So that's why I chose this one. Now, I've been listening to the Read Aloud Revival podcast a lot lately, which is a great one if you don't listen to it. And I've been kind of moved to make a mix, not always link it to everything that we're learning, and have a happy mix of things that she wants to read, as well as things that kind of go with what we're studying. So our next book that we're reading is actually one that she's chosen, and I'm looking forward to that. So that's the first step, is picking a book, and then it's just from the library, so it was free. For reading the book, we have a set time in the day that she reads for 20 minutes. And then when she's finished reading, she'll come and narrate to me, or we'll just kind of have a conversation about the book. This time around for our next book, I'm actually going to let her she reads before bed as well. And so I'm going to let her read that book, since it's her choice, a book that she chose. She'll read it during the school day and then also before bedtime, because it's kind of a bigger book and I want to be able to get through it and not just be like taking forever to finish it. So we have a set time during the day and then before she reads. I have been reading this book too with her. I don't know if all the time I will read the books alongside her, but right now I am thoroughly enjoying it. So I read before bed. I basically just read until I can't keep my eyes open anymore. So I'm sitting here trying to think about the next thing to describe to you, and I can already tell that this is going to be like an overwhelming set of videos, but I'm just going to keep going for it. If this is helpful, let me know, because I can share more novel units that we do. I'm just trying to make it like as easy, communicate it as easy as possible, but that's becoming quite difficult. So let's move on. Okay, the things that support my weaknesses. I am not a language arts person. I love books, but I am not a language arts person. I taught science and math when I was a teacher, never language arts. So it's just, it was a weakness growing up. It's a weakness in adulthood. So there are a couple things I use to kind of help me with that. The first is a grammar book. So we use Fix It Grammar, and she does it daily. I love it. Okay. The next is writing. She does a written narration 2 times a week from after she reads. And I also bought a simple creative writing book. So this supports me in the writing department. The next thing, the other thing is I found a little fancy list of literary devices. Now, there are probably 50 different things on here. This is by no means a checklist. I am not trying to cover all of these in her 4th grade year. I am 35 years old, and I can probably tell you what 12 of these are confidently. So it's more just a guide to kind of maybe put a focus somewhere. So if I'm picking a passage, I can be like, oh, we haven't talked about setting. Let's talk about the setting of this book, or something like that. So this is the other thing that I'm using. For this book, we talked about simile and repetition. So I put a check next to each of those things saying, hey, we've discussed this. So this is another go-to. Okay, so let's move on to the Copywork and how we use it in our lessons. Okay, instead of me blabbing about Copywork lessons, I'm going to actually turn this around and show you the notebook, because I think that visual is going to be a little bit easier. Okay, so this is our language arts notebook, and I'm just going to flip through these pages. Copyworks looks something like this. I started where I wrote it and she copied it, but we've changed it since then. We've got different notebooking pages here. I usually get these from our Fix It Grammar. If it has a Learn It page, I might put it in a notebook. Or if we're talking about one of these literary devices, I might put it in here, but I don't do it every time. Then we have our spelling words. These come from the actual copywork that we're studying. So we did 3 different passages for this book. And so you can see these chunks of words that we practiced together. And then at the end of when we've done all the things I want to do for that passage, we do dictation, where I read her the passage and she tries to write it with the correct grammar and spelling. So that's kind of the pattern you'll see here. This is how we've changed our copywork since then. And you can see here we talked about simile. And we've got some more notebooking pages from Fix It Grammar, and then also from our literary devices. All right, so this is another dictation, and then our final passage here, and more of our Fix It Grammar things. What's really great about this, by combining Fix It Grammar with this, is sometimes if I don't really know what to look at in the passage, we can look for things that we've learned in the grammar. So that's what I mean by like supporting me and my weaknesses. Sometimes I don't really know how to find all these crazy literary devices. And so by finding this, okay, here's an adverb, let's find a passage with some adverbs in it. And so I can use that as well. And then that's all we have so far. We'll be doing the dictation for that final passage today. Okay, a couple quick things to wrap this up. How do I choose a passage? Basically, when I'm reading, you know what this is like when you read something and you're like, wow, that was really good. That's usually the one I pick. Or if I'm familiar with something on here and I'll think, oh, I know, that's a perfect way to explain that. Because, I mean, just making myself aware of what's on here. I don't have to have it memorized, but I know some things. And so I just pick it as I read it, and I'll just make a mental note, and that'll be the next one. I'm not trying to line it up exactly week by week. I've just learned that that's not even worth the stress. So picking a passage, that's kind of how that works. The last thing we did when we finished our book was we made a poster together, and I made one with her, and it was so fun, such a cool little bonding thing. But it basically just has a picture of the book, and we gave it a little review, and we kind of just chose together what we wanted to put on here. We put these little file cabinets and wrote our favorite part and our favorite character, and it was so much fun, and she enjoyed it so much that she actually finished a book on her own and made her own poster, and I thought that was so cool. So we added it into her portfolio. So just one other piece of our language arts puzzle. Okay, I realized that was a lot of moving pieces. So if you have a question, just shoot me a message. I love talking about this. I'd love to share our experiences, kind of things I went right, things I went wrong. My favorite thing about this is it doesn't feel like a lesson. It feels like my oldest daughter and I have our own little book club. I started our next book last night, and I told her this morning, and I said, guess what? I started our next book. And she's, oh man. And so, well, how is it? How is it? And so we just kind of like have this conversation about books, and it's just the best thing ever. So I don't have something telling me how to teach it. I don't have something scripting me what to say. We just kind of talk about books and love books together. And it's just been such a joy and really so freeing. It becomes exciting and not something that feels like, oh, we have to get this next thing done. So send me questions if you have them. My second daughter and I are working through Logic of English, but one thing that I really love is I found this book through our library audiobook app. So she was actually listening to it during her quiet time too. So even though it wasn't kind of like all the same exact things we were doing, she was still part of our little book club fun. So that was just another thing I wanted to share, is the whole family can really be a part of it. I just thought of something else. I actually have a separate notebook for her narrations. I just wanted her to be able to like list them, and she keeps doing them on separate pages, but I had hoped that she would just kind of put them like this, but it's no big deal. And also I wanted to point out that I mentioned that she does these 2 times a week. Well, we've been working on this for several weeks, and there's only about 5 narrations in here. So even that doesn't always get done as I planned, but that's okay. That's what's so nice about doing it the way it fits us. Then for this creative writing, the way that I fit it in, I do not do it every day. It's kind of like my filler. So when we finished this book, but we were still catching up on some passage work, this is kind of what I've been doing with her to practice just some different creative writing skills. And so then we just kind of did a couple pages, and then we'll put it aside for a while we start our next book and then bring it back out later.